What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Eric, and as you can tell, we've got more spoilers to go over. So, doing a quick little live reaction to these spoilers. Yes, I've glanced over a few of these, so the live part may not be as great, but I promise you I'm still a little bit outraged by some of them. Others look really good and may or may not get play, but we'll talk about a little bit about that as we move through some of these spoilers. I am going to be using a combination of Scryfall and MTG Salvation today, just because Scryfall hasn't updated all of the spoilers that we've currently gotten. I will say that Scryfall is really good because it'll give you the source of the spoiler. As as some of you may already know, Dev from SBMTG has put out his spoiler for today. It was pretty sweet, and if you guys want an in-depth on that, go check out Dev over at SBMTG, as he goes pretty in-depth on ways you can use his pretty awesome little common there. But we'll talk about it in just a moment. For now, though, let's get a little bit larger here and talk about this sweet Vivian Arc Ranger. So it's a 4 mana, 4 loyalty walker that can go up to 5. It cannot downtick, uptick, downtick, right? So that part alone, that hurts me a little bit, but let's read it. For a +1, distribute 2 +1/1 counters among up to 2 target creatures. So you could put a 1/1 counter here and another 1/1 counter over here, and if you have some way to give additional +1/1 counters, you would get 2 triggers off of that. They gain trample until end of turn, so it may be relevant to actually, stick this on multiple creatures to give both of those creatures trample. It may be relevant to put, 2 +1/1 counters on a single creature. So, that gives us a little bit of flexibility. I do like that. The +1 doesn't really protect Vivian much, though, and if you don't already have a creature, it's not going to do a lot for you. But with the converted mana cost of triple green and 1, you're probably in a green deck that has access to some creatures. So that's probably that +1's probably going to work pretty well for you. The -3 here, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker. Now, this version of fight is a little different from a lot of the ones we see. First off, your creature's not going to receive damage back. Second off, your creature can actually deal that damage to a planeswalker. We don't see that very often, to have our creatures have the ability to deal damage to a planeswalker. Most of the time we have to fling that creature or something like that. If your creature has lifelink, it will still benefit from this because the creature is the one dealing the damage. Same with Death Touch. If you have a Death Touch creature deal damage to another creature, even if it's 1 power, it will be able to kill it. So in that aspect, Vivian does have a way to protect herself. The -5, you may choose a creature card you own from outside the game, reveal it, and put it into your hand. What does that mean for standard? For constructed play, that actually just means that you can pull a card from your sideboard and put it into your hand. Now, you can ultimate Vivian the turn after she comes down. So she comes down, you +1 her, you take her to 5, you put a couple +1/1 counters on some creatures, and then you neg 5 her to go get a creature from your library. That's not the worst thing in the world. However, I don't know if Vivian is as powerful as I've heard some hype to be. I think she might be playable in the right deck. But for right now, I think there might just be other planeswalkers we want to play with. Beside her here for our Saturday spoilers, we also have Blood-Soaked Altar. Blood-Soaked Altar, 6 mana, 4 in double black. You can tap it, pay 2 life, discard a card, and sacrifice a creature to create a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So discarding a card, sacking a creature, and paying 2 life to make a 5/5 flying demon. Limited bomb, maybe? You're giving up a lot. You're giving up, a permanent on the board, sacrificing a creature, giving up a card from your hand, and paying some life for the 5/5. You can only do this once per turn because you do have to sacrifice the altar. I know the key is now going to be in standard, and you could use the key to untap it. So you'd be able to, pay potentially 7 mana to play this, discard 2 cards, sack 2 creatures, pay 2 life or pay 4 life to make 2/5/5 demons. If, of course, you had the key, of course. So I mean, there's maybe some play there with Blood-Soaked Altar, but all in all, I'm not really impressed with Blood-Soaked Altar. There's some much better 6 mana creatures that we could play around with. Next here we've got Embodiment of Agonies, and this comes from your Sunday spoilers. Flying Death Touch, Embodiment of Agonies enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each different mana cost among non-land cards in your graveyard. For example, 2 and a black and 1 and 2 black are different mana cost. Okay, so we're not talking about overall converted mana, we're talking about different mana cost, and it does give us that example there. 2 and a black and 1 and 2 black are different mana costs. So that's potentially a lot of +1/+1 counters. Flying Death Touch Demon. This thing could be very huge in the late game. This card's got me curious a little bit. This may actually be playable. It is a Flying Death Touch Demon that wouldn't require a whole lot. It says non-land cards in your graveyard, so it wouldn't. You're not going to be able to count lands as 0, but it wouldn't take a whole lot to get a lot of +1/+1 counters on this creature. For 3 mana, if it's a 4/4 or larger, you're winning. For 3 mana, a 3/3 or larger, and you're doing all right. So that's not bad. I'm kind of interested in seeing Embodiment of Agonies and where it ends up in the format. I actually somehow expect it to get some play. So pretty sweet card. Now our next 2 are not translated, and I assume we just click on them, but I do have the other website pulled up. Rainy Nights, what it says here. I think it's the Blue Cavalier. If we go over to MTG Salvation, and where's the Cavalier? Where are you, Cavalier? MTG Salvation showing a lot more spoilers than we've had. Cavalier of Gales. There we go. Cavalier of Gales. Flying, when Cavalier of Gales enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. So Brainstorm. So this is a 5 mana Brainstorm, and when it dies, you shuffle it into its owner's library, then scry 2. So that's pretty cool. It's an Elemental Knight. We've seen these knights for all the colors now. They all have nice enter the battlefield triggers, and they all have pretty interesting leaves the battlefield triggers. So or dies, not leaves the battlefield. I do like this one, and shuffling it into your library does seem decent. The Scry 2 also seems good to help you find a replacement if you've lost this card. So yeah, Cavalier of Gales, pretty sweet here. I wanna move on to, let's do this, since the other one is also in a foreign language. We'll pull this back up here. Gyarados, no, it's not Gyarados, but Geragos, Vicious Watcher. This is 3 and 3 green. A lot of Black Lotus, a lot of petal mana there, right? Like you need some type of Lotus Petal to cast these things. Vigilance. Let's just start over, right? 3 and 3 green for an 8/7 with Vigilance. Okay, 6 mana for an 8/7 with Vigilance. Hydra spells you cast cost 4 less to cast, and whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, Geragos, Vicious Watcher, fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So they target our creature with a spell, not an ability, and we get to fight one of their creatures. That's pretty sweet, right? Yeah, they target any of our creatures, we get to fight one. Hydras cost 4 less to cast, so Hydra Crassus for 2 would be Hydroid for 4, which would draw you 2 cards and you would gain 2 life. So, I mean, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Heaven forbid you've got a ton of extra mana to pump into this. It is a legendary creature. I am sure that some of you commanders out there have been looking for, possibly, a good Hydra commander or something like that. So I'm sure some people will like this. You can ramp this out. You can get this out by turn 3. However, I'm a little bit iffy on running 6 converted mana cost cards in my deck, as we do know that it needs something. It needs to be extremely powerful the turn that it comes out in order to get any real effect out of a turn 6. Like in standard, turn 6s normally have to be something along the lines of Command the Dreadhorde or Carnage Tyrant, possibly this new Chandra that can't be countered. So turn 6 is very hard to resolve. So I don't know how much I like about this, but I was wrong about Command the Dreadhorde. I said that Command the Dreadhorde didn't impress me as much because it was a 6 converted mana cost spell and it was so easy to disrupt. Whether they're ripping this out of your hand early or just having counter available when it comes. Although if Little Teferi keeps getting play, I doubt we'll see a whole lot of counter. But all in all, this is a card that we do have to be aware of. It's on the radar, and it's a pretty interesting card. So let's. I'm just going to stay here, and we're just going to move on from here, right? We've already seen Embodiment of Agonies. Let's go to Ancestral Blade. Can I just move this? If I go over 1, look at that. There we go. Ancestral Blade here, and that's so foggy. 1 and a white for an equipment. When Ancestral Blade enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, then attach Ancestral Blade to it. Equip creature gets +1/+1. You can equip it for 1. Just a really cheap artifact. We have seen one of these from red and I believe blue already. We've also got this one, and I assume that we'll get one for the rest of the colors. So not an extremely bad artifact or equipment. And if we get some more Equipment Matters cards, we have Danitha, I think is her name. We have Danitha right now, and she could probably benefit from this. I do like that it enters the battlefield, makes a token, makes that token bigger. Just the auto equip onto that token does seem pretty sweet. So Ancestral Blade, not bad. Next here we've got Colossus Hammer. Talk about equipments, right? Equip creature gets +10/+10 and loses flying. That's right, you're not flying around with Thor's hammer. Who are you? It costs 8 mana to equip this hammer though, so it would be really sweet if we had some way to equip for free, but as of right now we don't. So Colossus Hammer, can't fly with it though. Equip creature gets +10/+10 and loses flying. I don't want to just disregard this, as if you ever end up attaching it to something, you've got a real monster on your hand there, right? There's only one way to be sure it's really dead. That's some great flavor text. That's right. Double tap. Hit it real hard. Hit it real hard. Moving on from Colossus Hammer to Sky Knight Vanguard. Human Knight flying. Whenever Sky Knight Vanguard attacks, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token that's tapped and attacking. That's right. Tapped and attacking. Tapped and attacking. It's a 1/2 flyer that creates tokens. Doesn't have haste, but jump now. Some sweet flavor text, right? Do we have a picture? This is what we have to go through for spoilers, ladies and gentlemen. Multiple pages. All right, so this is our picture. All right, it's not bad. Not bad. At least we have art for it, right? This might get play. Just the fact that it makes creatures, that seems pretty good. Whenever sire, you are aware there are men on the side of your Hippogriff. Attacks create a 1/1. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Sir, are you aware there are men on the side of your hippogriff? I guess that's the flavor text. All right, moving on. Spoilers. Everybody's trying to do what they can, right? Mystic Forge. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an artifact card or a colorless non-land card. You can also tap this artifact, pay 1 life, and exile the top card of your library. So if you need to move on beyond that, that card, you can just tap this, pay 1 life, and get rid of that card and move on. Mystic Forge. It's not the worst thing in the world. In an artifact deck, though, it could potentially be Frenzy, right? Unlike Frenzy, you can still cast cards from your hand with this. So this could be a sleeper. This could be an extremely powerful card as more sets come out. Remember, this isn't going to be rotating till next year, next October. So we have a couple sets that are going to come out between now and then. And if we get some artifacts worth casting, then this could be potentially huge. So yeah, I'm fairly interested in this card. And if we get a good artifact deck, then this is probably where I want to be in Magic. Right here, Mystic Forge, 4 mana, seems about the right price for this. Doesn't have a lot of restrictions. As long as it's in an artifact deck, we kind of have to build with restrictions with Experimental Frenzy anyway. So pretty interesting card here. Moving on up, we've got Brandborn Cutthroat. Flash, whenever you cast a spell during your opponent's turn, put a 1/1 counter on Brandborn Cutthroat. Not bad. It's a Merfolk Pirate. Finally, right? In a set with Merfolk and Pirates, we didn't get a Merfolk Pirate. And now we get a Merfolk Pirate. Alright, so this fits in either deck, right? The next one here, this is a 1 blue, 1 red for a 2/2 with flying and haste. That's it. One red, 1 blue for a 2/2 with flying and haste. It is an elemental wizard. So it is an elemental. It is a wizard. That's going to fit in a couple things, I assume. Lightning Stormkin. Interesting card. We'll have to see what decks develop, but it's very possible that there could be a deck that would want a flying haste 2/2 for 2. So flying haste bear, I'm not disappointed, especially in the creature types. The fact that it's an elemental and it's a wizard opens some extra doors for us. If we end up running, some type of Wizard's Retort or Wizard's Lightning combo, or in combination with our other wizards or our other elementals or something like that, this does give that deck a few more wizards to put in the elemental deck. So not the worst thing in the world. We've gotten a couple other really cool wizards. We got the zombie wizard, which pretty much any lich is a zombie wizard. So a very interesting card, and I'll be excited to see if this actually fits into the elemental or some type of new wizard deck. Adelice is still a thing, so these are all things we need to think about. Next here we got Yarok's Wavecrasher. Alright, Yarok's Wavecrasher, another elemental, so another blue elemental. We haven't gotten a ton of blue elementals that were strictly blue. Will this be enough to push us into Teamer? I think we probably already have enough to push us into Teamer with the elementals that draw cards for 3 mana. So 3 and a blue will get us a 4/4 elemental that whenever it enters the battlefield, return another creature you control to its owner's hand. So only if we're wanting to do some kind of Omnath, bounce, play again, that sort of thing, will I actually think that I want this this Wavecrasher. I would have preferred it to have something like Flash, so we could use it to actually protect something, but at sorcery speed, I'm just really not seeing it. That's pretty much all I've got on this one. This card's not that great, and it doesn't really impress me that much. 4 mana for a 4/4 that when it enters the battlefield, return another creature you control to its owner's hand. That's not a meta ability. You can play this by itself because it does say return another creature you control to its owner's hand, so it won't return itself. But that's about the best plus side I've got for it. All right, next here we're gonna talk about Dev's spoiler from SBMTG. Now this is a 3-mana 2/2, so it doesn't really pass the vanilla test. It's a bird. Birds are cool. I like birds. It's a flying 2/2, and whenever Gorging Vulture enters the battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard, and you gain a life for each creature card put in the graveyard this way. Now that's not horrible, and there's a lot of different ways you can use it. If you wanted to gain life and you had a creature heavy deck and you had some kind of like a Johnny's Pride Mate or something like that, yes, that's good. It's also probably going to be good in any type of Reanimator or Graveyard Matters deck. The question is this good enough? Like, for the effect, do we have a deck out there that's going to want the effect bad enough to play what I consider to be a bad creature, right? 3 mana for a 2/2, we need to get a lot off of that, and it's not actually replacing itself. Yes, it's going to fill our graveyard a little bit, but that's not actually going to replace the card in our hand, and for that I don't really like. But I do like the fact that we have something that'll mill ourselves for 4 cards, and and if I really need to mill myself for 4 cards, I guess this would be an acceptable option. But I think there's some other options we could use if we just wanted to mill ourselves. As far as the life gain goes, though, I don't think some of those same things that we would use to mill ourselves would also gain us life. So maybe, just depending on how the Reanimator deck forms up, whether or not I would want to give this a slot in the deck. If it had anything else like Death Touch or anything else, I would probably be all about it. It's possible that the 2 power might be relevant in certain decks, just because if you are running in, say, an Orzhov deck, you can Militia Bugler and help go find this, and then dump some other stuff in your graveyard. Maybe you want to use like Sauron to bring some stuff back from your graveyard, things like that. And in which case, this card's probably absolutely fine for that. Depending on your pulls, it might be awesome in draft or limited as well if you have any type of Graveyard Matters mechanics. So all in all, Gorging Vulture, pretty cool. Awesome spoiler dev. So now that we've gotten through that, let's go over and look at some of the others that have been released but are not actually on Scryfall yet, right? All right, so we're on Battalion Foot Soldier here. Battalion Foot Soldier, 3 mana, so 2 and a white for a 2/2, and it's a human soldier. When Battalion Foot Soldier enters the battlefield, you may search your library for any number of cards named Battalion Foot Soldier, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. Well, we've had these Squadron Hawk type cards before, and they do get play in certain decks from time to time. The Vampire one even got printed in like back-to-back sets. So that's still around. We have a couple of these type cards in the format right now. And it's just a pretty basic mechanic. You don't have to go get all of the copies that you have in your deck. You could go get 1 or possibly 2, and then when you play it again, go ahead and grab the last one to shuffle your deck. You can always play the 4th one and still search your library and shuffle your library. So that is, never underestimate the power of shuffle, right? Battalion Foot Soldier. It's good to know that it's in the format. All right, next here we got Ferry Miscreant. Ferry Miscreant enters the battlefield. If you control another creature named Ferry Miscreant, draw a card. Okay. You're going to want to run 4 of these, right? Maybe decent in like some type of mono blue flyer or blue flyers deck. It is a 1 mana 1/1 flyer, and we have seen some things that actually care about flyers, so this may actually get played depending on if the deck forms up and how competitive the deck actually is. Undead Servant. Now here's a 4 mana 3/2 zombie. Undead Servant, when it enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token for each land or each card named Undead Servant in your graveyard. Okay, that might be worth paying 4 mana for, especially if we've been using the Vulture to dump cards into the graveyard. We might actually have this. The later in the game you get, and each one after the first is going to be more and more power. The very first one is only going to be a 3 mana or a 4 mana 3/2 though, because if you don't have one in the graveyard already, you're not going to get a zombie. However, you start getting a benefit after the first. So everything after the first one becomes beneficial. So I kind of like Undead Servant. I don't know how much I would play it, and if I didn't have a way to actually discard cards into my graveyard, I don't know if I would play this or not. But again, we'll see what the format has for it. Packmaster, another bear. We get a 1 in red for a 2/2. It's a hound. I call it a bear, but you know, actually looks like a dog I had one time named Bear. You ever own a chow? It looks just like a chow. This one's rabbit, however. Look at the red eyes and snarl. We've got 1 in a red. Each creature you control named Packmaster gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So unless you're in a pack, you're not going to get a lot out of the fire breathing on this. But the fire breathing itself is an effect that we've had in the past that's kind of worth it. So does Packmaster get play? I don't know, but I would probably still draft this if I was in the colors. So card's not bad, and I like my 2-drops. Alright, we've got Goldmane Griffin here. This is 3 and 2 white for a 3/2 Griffin. Flying Vigilance, and when Goldmane Griffin enters the battlefield, you may search your library or graveyard for a card named Ajani Inspiring Leader, reveal it and put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. That's pretty much it. This is a rare. I assume it comes out of the Planeswalker deck, and that's why it's wanting you to search up a Planeswalker from the Planeswalker decks. These cards almost never get play. They're decent in the decks that they're built in, and that's pretty much it. 5 mana for a 3/2 flyer, even with Vigilance, and it replaces itself. It does give you a card back as long as you're running the Ajani that it lists. I don't think this will get a whole lot of play unless Johnny Inspiring Leader gets a whole lot of play, and I don't really see that happening either. So moving on past the Griffin. Next here we've got Savannah Sage. This is 1 and 1 white for another 2/2, and when Savannah Sage enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. It is a cat, it is a cleric. If that matters, then hey, now is not the time for your light to fade. Alright, so brighten my day, Savannah Sage. Alright, we've got Twin Blade Paladin, another white card here. 3 and 1 white for a 3/3. Whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on Twin Blade Paladin. As long as you have 25 or more life, Twin Blade Paladin has double strike. Holy cow, Johnny's Pride Mate on crack, y'all. If the Johnny's Pride Mate deck becomes a thing, then this could possibly become a thing. If you've already played a couple life gain matters things, even if you've just played an Johnny's Welcome and you play this and it becomes a 4/4, heaven forbid you already have 25 life or more, you've got a 4/4 for 4 that has double strike. Oh man, yes, give me more, give me more, give me more. If that Ajani life gain deck becomes a thing, then this card probably goes in it. Even if it's at the top end, this probably goes in there somewhere. Alright, next here we've got Yangling's Harbinger. This is another one of those Planeswalker deck cards. It enters the battlefield. You get to go search up Mu Yangling, Celestial Wizard, awesome name. Reveal it and put it in your hand. Shuffle your library. Same thing. This is a 5 mana 2/4. So again, probably really good in the Planeswalker deck. That's a vacuum though, and I doubt it's going to be very good outside that vacuum. Next here we've got Celestial Messenger. Now this is 2 and a blue for a 3/2 bird spirit with flash, flying, and celestial messenger gets +1/+1 as long as you control a Yangling planeswalker. This doesn't require celestial, the celestial, like the planeswalker planeswalker deck planeswalker. So if there was another Yangling planeswalker, you could still get the +1/+1 from it. But again, planeswalker deck card. I don't know if I would actually be playing this or not. It is a bird spirit, and we've had a couple Spirit Matters cards. I also know people like birds, so bird tribal? Huh? Moving on. All right. Next here we've got Waterskin Shaman, 1 and a blue. Whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, Waterskin Shaman gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It's an elemental. It's a shaman. Maybe not. The card's fairly interesting. It is a 2-mana 2/1. Doesn't have any keywords though. Yeah, it might be playable, right? The elemental deck could want this. I somehow doubt it though. The flying deck could want this. Again, somehow doubt it, as that deck's going to want pretty much all flyers, and I don't really think this is a big enough payout for a flyers deck. So, and I don't think it's any payout at all for an elemental deck unless you were trying to maybe draft elementals or something, in which case you might want this. Unless it's in a planeswalker deck only, and then, well, whatever. Next here we've got Dark Remedy, 1 and a black. Instant, target creature gets +1/+3 until end of turn. That's it. 2 mana, +1/+3. No, doesn't come back if it dies that turn or anything like that. That's pretty unremarkable. Thirsting Bloodlord here. This one looks okay, right? We've got 2 and 2 black, so 4 mana for a 3/3 vampire. With other vampires you control, get +1/+1. It's a little bit much to pay for an Ethem, but all in all, card's pretty cool. I like it, and maybe in the vampires deck, maybe you want this, maybe not. It does seem a little bit much to cast. Again, we'll have to see where that vampires deck goes, if it actually gets built, if it's competitive. If it's competitive, this probably isn't in it, just because the card itself is not an extremely competitive card, and there are other ways to pump your team. So again, it just depends on the slots available in that vampires deck. Personally, though, I don't think the card's got enough. 3 mana 3/3 that gave others +1/+1 would be pretty good, right? I mean, we already have a 2 mana 2/2 that gives a +1/+1 to vampires. So maybe a 3 mana 3/3. I would have accepted a 3 mana 2/2 that gave +1/+1 better than I would accept the 4 mana 3/3. So I don't know. I want to like this card, but I just can't really get behind it. All right, so we got a Savage Gorger. It's another vampire. It's a 3 mana 1/1, but flying, and at the beginning of your end step, if an opponent lost life this turn, put a 1/1 counter on Savage Gorger. So that could actually be worth it, right? Savage Gorger could actually see a little bit of play, just because, at the beginning of your end step, if you attack that turn, your opponent actually lost some life, then you're going to get a +1/1 counter on it. I really do wish that this was on both end steps. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost life this turn, put a +1/1 counter on it. Or even at the beginning of each upkeep, if an opponent lost life the previous turn, put a +1/1 counter on it. We've seen these effects in the past, and I like the card, but again, I just don't think it's really powerful enough for play. We'll see though. Again, the vampire deck may have a spot for this, but I actually kind of doubt it. Moving on here, we've got Sorin's Guide. Sorin's Guide is the Planeswalker card here for Sauron. When it enters the battlefield, you get to search your library for Sauron Vampire Lord, put it in your hand, and then shuffle your library. No keyword on this one. It's a 5 mana 4/2. Again, outside that vacuum, I doubt it gets much play. Next here, we've got Chandra's Flame Wave. 5 mana sorcery. It deals 2 damage to target player and each creature that player controls, and then you get to go search your library for Chandra Flame's Fury, reveal it and put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. This is the Chandra Planeswalker deck card, and this one's actually pretty good. I don't want to pay 5 mana for a 2 damage board wipe, so I doubt this is actually going to be played, but other than, like, compared to like the Sauron's version that does nothing but goes and finds Sauron, the Chandra one will at least deal some damage to the opponent, and it'll deal damage to each creature they control. So there's a little bit of merit to actually like this one, but again, very, very overpriced. Chandra's Flame Wave. It's high tide. Moving on. Pyroclastic Elemental. So 5 mana for a 5/4. That's at least playable, right? Maybe. 1 and double red. It deals 1 damage to target player. So you can pay 3 mana to just start pinging target player. Can't do it to a planeswalker or a creature. That would be better. But all in all, Pyroclastic Elemental, pretty cool card. Next here, we've got Wildfire Elemental. This is another Chandra deck card. Whenever an opponent is dealt non-combat damage, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. That's interesting. Even for a, I mean, if you can do damage outside of combat, you could get quite a bit of a pump here. If you're casting, say, instants and sorceries and targeting your opponent, this is almost prowess on all creatures you control. I could actually see this being like the top end in some type of goblin deck or something like that, where at that point you can just, I don't know, maybe throw a goblin at them, deal 2 damage, now you pump the rest of your board, so now that your goblins trade better in combat or something like that. So I can see this actually getting a little bit of play. It's also an elemental, so if we do end up with some way to give some good non-combat damage, even if we're just, you know, pinging with some type of planeswalker, then this could be worth looking at. Next here we got Ethereal Elk. Now this is going to be the Vivian card. It has trample, 5 mana for a 3/3 with trample, Elk Spirit, and you'll go get your Vivian, Nature's Avenger, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. Again, I don't find these cards very impressive, so we're just gonna move on here. The next one's a 4 mana 4/4, so 2 and double green. We'll give you a Trampling Rhino, and whenever you cast a spell that targets Gnarlback Rhino, draw a card. So in a deck that wants to like cast a bunch of giant growths or something like that, this could see some play. It's definitely worth it to know that the card is available. It's still a little bit restrictive. You do have to cast a spell that targets the Rhino. That spell does not have to resolve for you to draw a card though, so that part alone is pretty decent. Moving on up here to Vivian's Crocodile. 3 mana for a 3/3. We're passing the vanilla test. It's a Crocodile Spirit. Vivian's Crocodile gets +1/+1 as long as you control a Vivian Planeswalker. So if you have a Vivian, then this is a 3 mana 4/4. Does that make it playable? Probably not. No? Okay. Alright, I'm with you guys. Not playable. Next here we've got an Imperial Outrider, Human Knight. He's riding on a dinosaur. This is 3 and 1 white for a 1/5. We're gonna need a Butts Matter deck for me to want to cast this. Outside of like High Tide or something like that, I can't see this being playable at all. So yeah, moving on. Next here we got Engulfing Eruption. This is 2 and 2 red, deals 5 damage to target creature. It's sorcery speed though, right? So not the greatest thing in the world. If you need a lava axe, There's lava axe, right? All right, next is Nimble Bird Sticker. Bird Sticker. It's a 2/3 for 3 with reach. There's not actually a lot of creatures out there that have reach. Fairly rare in red as well. You don't really see a lot of reach in red. It's a goblin. Yep, that's about all we can say about it. Red really wants creatures to pass the vanilla test or have some other really nice key feature. Reach just doesn't do that for me. What goes up must get stuck. Oh, the jokes behind this one. Moving on, we got the Mystic Forge. I talked about this card earlier, so we'll go ahead and move past it. The Lightning Stormkin, we spoke about this one earlier as well. We also spoke about the Branthorn Cutthroat and Deb's Gorging Vulture. We also talked about Yarok's Wave Crasher. Next here we've got Brought Back. This is double white for an instant speed. Choose up to 2 target permanent cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn and return them to the battlefield tapped. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay, so you wipe the board, and I let it happen, lose a couple things, and then I bring 2 of those permanents back to the battlefield. This card might get some play, even if it's just sideboard play. This could easily get some play, and if you're in a deck that has a lot of decent enter the battlefield triggers, then this card might be the real deal. Brought Back. We're going to have to be on the radar for this and have to really consider this anytime that we're getting ready to destroy multiple things on the battlefield against double white being up. It's definitely something we have to be aware of, especially if we're wanting to sweep the board or something. So this is 2 target permanent cards, guys. That, like, you Elder Spell me, I may just bring back both of my Planeswalkers, at which point, like, if one's a Narset and I'd already down ticked it, that's value right there. So yeah, not the worst thing in the world. You can even pay 2 mana that you untapped with your Teferi to bring back your Teferi the turn that they kill your Teferi. Yeah, this card's good. Alright, Tails End. This is another instant speed spell. For 1 and a blue, counter target activated ability, triggered ability, or legendary spell. I didn't know about this card. I hadn't read this card. This would have been on my thumbnail if I knew about it. Oh man, Tails End. 1 and a blue, counter target. So stifle, activated or triggered ability, or legendary spell. So it's not just dead. Like, you can still counter Lyra, you can still counter Planeswalkers. This card's good. It's a good counter. Good counter with some flexibility, right? Hydra Crassus is a cast trigger. That's a triggered ability. Triggers on cast. Planeswalker abilities are activated abilities. Yeah, like there's some merit to this card. When you are gone, will anyone remember your story? By Unknown. Ooh, by Unknown. It's deep. That's deep. All right, so Vorstclaw. It's a 6 mana 7/7 elemental horror, and we're done. There we go. 4 and double green for a 7/7 elemental Vorstclaw. Roots reach deep, and sometimes they tap into things better left undisturbed. Alright, so we've got a possessed elemental tree here. Alright, not the worst thing in the world. I actually got a chance to watch Lewis Scott Vargas's video on this particular card. This was LSV's spoiler. He got a pretty sweet one, and if you guys have been liking Dreadhorde Arcanist, then you might actually like Thunderkin Awakener here. We've got 1 and a red, haste, and whenever Thunderkin Awakener attacks, choose target elemental creature card in your graveyard with toughness less than Thunderkin Awakener's toughness. not power. Return that card to the battlefield tapped and attacking. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So, what this card tells me is, first off, we need elementals. We either need we need to run elementals that are smaller than Thunderkin Awakener, or we need to run elementals that have well, first off, smaller than Thunderkin Awakener, or we need to have the ability to make Thunderkin Awakener bigger. Omnath will allow us to do things like that. As we make this bigger, we're going to start getting other things back. You can get the 3 mana, like the Rift something, enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. So that's not bad. The creature's toughness does have to be less than Thunderkin Awakener, so it does have to be 1 toughness, unless you can pump the Awakener. But all in all, I really do like the Awakener. You can also play this and give it haste, so that's worth noting. If you want to bring back a bunch of 1/1s or 1 toughness creatures, then that will work. It does only bring back elementals, so unless we've got some type of skelemental, right, some like 6/1 or something like that, being able to turn 1 dump a skelemental into your graveyard and then play this on turn 2 and swing for 7 on 2 doesn't seem horrible. You also don't exile it after you sack it, so if you do have a creature that you brought back 1 turn, that same creature can come back again the following turn. Also, we have a lot of Elemental Matters cards, and since we are sacrificing the Elemental, that'll actually work with some of our other Elementals Matters cards like Omnath. So, I actually like Thunderkin Awakener here, and again, if we can make it any larger, we're just going to get super value off of it. So, that's going to do it for the spoilers for today. We'll see you back here tomorrow for more spoilers. More spoilers, and we'll do those live as always. And then we've got our subscriber decks coming up later tonight. So if you guys want to check out some good community decks, some builds and brews from the community, yeah, I know the the meta is fairly solved, but people still want to build. They still want to try to crash their ideas against the meta, and that's exactly what we'll be doing tonight. We've got 3 sweet decks posted over the course of the last week, and we'll be playing those. So if you're watching this on the replay, just check the channel. There may actually already be a replay of the community decks up. So see you for community decks. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had fun, and we'll see you next time here on Sideboard MTG.